What is going on, everybody? I am here with your boy, the coach that I put at the top of the power rankings this season, coach of Team Liquidation. It is Daddy. Daddy, please introduce yourself.
Hello, Bo. Thanks for having me on. Happy to talk some smack.
We are going to light it up this season. The drama has already started with all the stuff with LTG and emo. Team Liquidation was saying that's looking spicy, baby. We got to get in on some of that, okay? Okay. So
Spicy? No. That's mayo.
Mayo, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
Patrick, that's not an instrument. Come on, brother. You know better than that.
Mhm.
Look, Daddy,
Yeah.
please talk a little bit about your team first. I want to hear enlighten me. Tell me how you drafted your players here. I'm looking at this lineup. Tell me more about it.
Sure. So we weren't as active in the auction as we have been in seasons past. Went pretty top heavy, which if you know how I draft, why not try drafting players that way too? So our first num up was Divinity by Lavender Town, who told us afterwards that he has never spoken to either of those coaches. So definitely wasn't a nomination that we were expecting that early. But he's someone that we get along with really well. Really excited to play with him again after he took last season off. Super active, just good team presence. And so spent what I felt was fair value for him and decided that we wanted a team of heavy hitters. And so going in early on Tago as well in that first round of nominations, went with the highest possible bid that we could and filled in the rest of the roster with some mid players that we're still excited about and excited to work with. So far, pretty much everyone's been really active in team building, mocking, and the draft. So looking forward to rotating players in and out. We're not going to be a team, unfortunately, like last season where we were in win now mode and sort of had to just hammer home wins, play the same lineup from week 4 on through playoffs. And so even just this week, we've got 2 new players in looking to get everyone active.
I was gonna say, I love you, I love Tago, but one of my favorite people I see here on this draft board is hype beast Master Baguette. Is he going to be playing week 2? And where are you thinking people are going to be slotted in when they do play?
Yeah, Master W is playing this week, slotting in Little Cup, taking on Dawn for a matchup that we're pretty excited about. I saw the Smack Talk was already starting early in chat for that. So
Yeah, Don was saying that he was going to slit Master Baguette's throat, and I was like, oh my goodness, they're in different states, so I don't know how that's going to work. That's going to be crazy. Yeah, so looking at some of these other teams here, what are you thinking about like Fluttermane Pirates and LTG to the left of you first?
I think that what you were stating on some of your earlier videos about the PR is pretty close to accurate. I think Emo is the team that we're probably the most worried about in prep. Teamed with Cam before, dude's a beast, goes hard. Same with Zakwi, practices really hard every week, gets mocks out. I think Wombo and Hopeless are 2 of the strongest players in this pool. And, they didn't start off on the strongest week 1, but I think that's definitely not a team to sleep on. You asked about FMP. It's another team that got last season's Little Cup MVP Reg. I mean, dude went 7-1 last season. That's a scary matchup. Teamed with Cyber before, someone that's pretty active in mocks and goes out and wins every week. King Rock had a couple great games against him in Gen 6. With that not being a format this season, I'm curious to see what format he tries to main this season. And just think that the rest of them, I'm not as familiar with the bottom half of their roster outside of Gao, who's just a great team presence guy. LTG, I hesitant to give them the 05 rating that you had them at. I think they've still got some really strong players. Rilix and Healy going to come out swinging. Zero's one of my favorite teammates that I've ever had. Don's, losing this week, but maybe the rest of the season he can turn that around.
And your team's playing LTG this week,
Oh,
just
of
for
course.
just for the context for the viewers.
Uh-huh.
Relix came out with that 6-0 in week 1 as well.
He did. That was really impressive.
And Reg, who you said actually lost to Bubba in Little Cup, but the FMP, one of their Little Cup teams is a little bit dubious to me, and they brought that dubious team the first week. They basically have 2 win cons, and if neither of them sweeps, then I feel like they just lose, and that's exactly what happened.
It is definitely interesting to see when you have such a top heavy team with a Ponyta and it's high rent. Usually you do want to surround your Tyrant with, a fast special sweeper to sort of clean up, break for it if it can't get the DD going. And I do kind of see where you're coming from with that.
Yeah, we'll get into teams in a little bit though. I didn't
Hmm.
want to drag that on
Sure.
too much. What do you think about the Pony Island Pelipers here?
They were definitely a tough week one match. Happy that we ended up coming through with the win. I'll double check my builder next time as long as to avoid another embarrassing situation against Zach. Not to take anything away. My guy played great. Um, their team's interesting. I'm pretty familiar with Shaded and Clay, and they drafted, some pretty difficult time zones. So not exactly sure how well communication's going in that server, but in terms of playing, I can see the vision.
Mm. Yeah, so I Pony Island Pelipers was actually my second pick uh, in my preseason power rankings. But I see what you said about the Emo Flamigo. I feel like they are going to. I said sink or swim. Like to me, I feel like they're either going to be second or fifth. They're either going straight to the top or straight to the bottom for me.
I think they're going to be a similar situation to us last season where they just got to make playoffs. It might be a slog to get there, but once you get them in games, that's where they'll thrive.
Yeah, yeah, I have a bunch of solid players, so I do
Hmm.
like the lineup, and I think it could go pretty hard.
Hmm.
Cool, right on. Uh, did you
And
have
finally,
anything to
the
say?
Outlaws. I think the
Uh,
Outlaws did get the
yeah,
steal of the auction with Grum. Compared to some of the other first round picks, that value was pretty nice. If I remember correctly, he was about 35K versus, 50 for Tago, 40, 45 for Relix. Just the value was there. Guy comes out. I mean, the results speak for themselves. Best record in the DTT Tour history.
yeah. Grum's usually going for like usually everybody knows that Primal and Poppy and Bubba, whoever's like coaching that team, is always going to be paying for Grum, and so usually people are bidding Grum up to like the most expensive player ever. But they definitely got away with him cheap this season, right?
They did get some value, and then that meant that they were able to flesh out the rest of their roster. I think they've got one of the deeper teams. I don't know if it's quite as top heavy as some of the others with fantastic 1v1 players, but if they can make up for that just by having a solid roster that they can rotate in and out and get players comfortable, I mean that we've seen that before in DPL and other tours where sometimes it's the deepest team that makes the deepest run.
Right. And so they lost week one, but I honestly do think that uh, I expect them to go 2-3 or 3-2. I think if they go 3-2 and make playoffs, I do think they have a good shot at
Hmm.
championships. Cool. Right on. Well, I'm going to switch over to the drafts page real quick. And can you talk me through some of the drafts? Let's start up at your regional dexes right now. What were you thinking?
Sure. So regional decks as a format, you would think, based on how we've done Sword and Shield and Scarlet Violet pre-DLC, where limited distribution, that those tended to be pretty weak, and you would see, Rotom Heat, Seismitoad cores be priced in the 12 to 14 range. Not so now. These are borderline OU teams when you look at most of them. The fact that there's no Terra definitely helps, but just looking, for instance, at our team too, when you've got a Golden Go and Amorous Roaring Moon, core, and just fleshing it out with other things that we felt were definitely viable, it seems a little crazy to me to see the power creep.
Yeah, honestly, I said this in my previous video, but you could almost build something similar to that with like Aegislash, Hydreigon, Togekiss, which I feel like I have seen on teams in previous generations, but I feel like with these new mons, it just like kicked everything up like two steps in power, honestly.
That, in addition to the pools being smaller, just having six, you see a lot of, hey, let me copy your homework with some of these drafts. And with pools being smaller, large budgets, it just sort of created the perfect storm.
Yeah,
And it was something that we noticed during the auction and wanted to try and take advantage of in the drafts.
absolutely, absolutely. I think everybody's regional dex team looks pretty strong, honestly. I feel like that was one where everybody just looked like overpowered.
I do. There were some standouts to me though. I really like Outlaws team too. Just anytime you can get a Chili into a Baxcalibur or Kyurem, that type beat works really well, especially with all the pivoting that they've got. Grendel maybe isn't my favorite low tier fairy in a meta without, strong fighting type megas. I think that's where it really thrives, but it can still service its role. And then Kamal is an underrated spinner, something that can
Yep.
come, 2, 3 games.
Yeah, that was one of my call outs in my
Mhm.
draft analysis video as well. I agree with that. That's a
I
good
think
one.
they definitely supported it better than the Flamigo version of the backs.
Hmm. Yeah, I I agree. I think Chicago Outlaws Team 2 is probably one of my favorites, and I think it's super deadly looking. Cool. Can you tell me more about your Uber's team?
Sure. So we felt that Ubers was a meta where teams were going to be focused really hard on bulk, and so we wanted to, stuff that breaks pretty well. And looking at some of the other drafts, we've seen some similar approaches. We've had Sun boosted Chi Sun boosted, or sorry, and Sand teams that really complement their Ubers with strong support options. The budgets for Ubers felt maybe a little more than we were expecting. It was nice to see the option to get 3 Ubers, but the non-Ubers felt like you could go pretty top heavy and not get punished too hard.
Hmm. Yeah, something we were thinking was like if you were forced to get 2 or 3 pointers and you were forced to draft something like an Arbok in that last slot, it's like Arbok in an Uber's metagame, you really just can't play it. So like you kind of have to have in excess of points in an Uber's draft so that you can get non-Uber's mons that can still at least check an Uber in some way.
I do feel like Ubers is one where you can get real creative, though. I mean, I know you're an old Gens player. You're surely familiar with Jump Left Thriving and Gen 3 Sun Ubers.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, and sometimes you get something like a Parasect, which can switch in on a Kyogre. And I noticed you
Mhm.
guys got the Grafify. Uh, I assume you were thinking something like similar with that, right? What was the thought process there?
Uh, in order to avoid, some of those like cheese setup matchups or really powerful, we noticed that a lot of the Ubers tended to be ghost types, just something that uh, to take advantage of.
Yeah, I feel like it's you can find something like a Liepard or something with Prankster in the low tiers, or
Yep.
something with a typing that is just shuts down a very specific Uber, but trying to trying to find it just a normal 2 pointer. Like again, Arbok, like I can't think of anything an Arbok would really be doing. Maybe a Scarf Arbok to try to check like
That's true.
whatever
It's
the
definitely a match of getting creative. You typically see those Roselias, Grottles, Quilladins as being high priority targets, when in actuality, in an Uber's meta, stuff like Cottony is what you should actually be targeting.
right. Yeah, yeah, as opposed to like the regional decks you might want to grottle.
Hmm.
But Ubers you definitely need that cottony. Cool. How about Little Cup? Do you have anything to say here? Are you much of a Little Cup guy?
I do love some Little Cup. Playing in a couple LC off-season tours right now. Big fan of the way that our drafts came out, actually. And so Little Cup was the first time that we really noticed a pattern of because the team's ones ended up coming out so strong for a lot of teams, they were hesitant to double down and double dip on their team twos. And so that was where we saw a lot of, we felt like value picks slipping. So Ponyta Galar should almost always be a pick two or an early pick at least in Little Cup. And the fact that it almost fell to the second round because teams like us with an Abra were hesitant to go double psychic
Mm.
was really something that we found interesting. And so since Little Cup tended to draft faster than all of the other ones, shout out Sun Moon Black White, that went on for a week. Um, that was actually affected our strategy in later drafts, was trying to identify things that went early in other drafts and take advantage of those as steals.
Yeah, so like the Emo Flamigo got Abra in like the 6th round in the Little Cup draft 2, which is just
They did
insane to
it.
me.
They did, and I know people are down on it in a meta with no hidden power. But I think when you consider the fact that there's no pursuit, I think that greatly outweighs the loss of coverage.
And I agree. I still think Abra is absolutely insane, either Life Orb or focus sash, and especially when you have like a Diglett with it, like you guys do. Timber and Diglett support it really well.
It's one that you have to support. It's not one that you can just slap on any team like a Scraggy or a Ponyta that will really carry the team, can come every week. It's one that needs, you need a strong dark switch and ways to remove counters, especially with limited coverage options.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's going to be a powerful team this season.
I'm definitely a fan. I'm a big fan of the way both of our little cup teams came out. I think that's one of our stronger uh, formats.
Right on. Okay, jumping down to black white. I know you guys got a cool idea for that first black white team.
We did. We're definitely excited to play stall. If you guys want to save time, forfeit now. I know it's everybody's favorite format. I'm sure those replays are going to be awful. But just black white, when there's no defog, you really have to prioritize hazard control and hazard setters. And so I think the teams that are going to thrive are the people that are familiar with that and are able to position themselves to take advantage, of TSS style teams.
Hmm. And the drag second team.
Drag, HO. It's just we wanted to give people as different of a look as you could. You can't have a good matchup against both styles.
Yeah. When we were
Um,
making, oh, sorry, go
it's a
ahead.
little unfortunate that we pick one, had to pass up on Kelds, but just saw the value of drag being more difficult to handle versus just a really strong Keld. Traditional style offense, such as that Pony Island Pelipper team looks great. That Emo Flamingo team looks great. They were able to flesh out Keldeo drafts stronger than I thought you would be able to. So definitely give him some props for that.
Yeah. So something I was saying when we were making
Mhm.
the black white boards is that in black white, just the power of dragons is overwhelming if you don't have good steals. So when you play OU, everybody has a Ferrothorn, and you also have rain, so you can protect your Ferrothorn with from like hidden power fires with the rain. And a lot of people have Jirachis and this and that and the other. But when you're playing draft here, steals can sometimes be difficult to like. Not everybody can always get a really strong steal, and if you do have a strong steal, like let's say Bronzong, which is usually pretty good at checking most dragons. Uh, so the Bronzong's pretty good at checking the Garchomp, but you guys have a Hydreigon on the team as well. If Hydreigon can break through that, then Garchomp can basically just outrage the rest of the team, right?
You have to remember Steel in this gen is
Ah,
still, yep, exactly. Old gens gets everybody. So
and it's funny because
uh,
I'm an old gens player too, right?
And so Black White has been really interesting. If you're following the scene in Smogon, there's been a lot of changes lately. Banning Sand Rush, just really interesting advances in the meta in ways that we haven't seen in other old gens. So excited to see how your version of it goes. No rain, which has definitely been pretty centralizing, but still allowing sand. Um, and then not seeing other teams prioritize sand as much was something that I was a little surprised by. Getting round 7 Hippo.
Yeah.
It's definitely something that caught me a little bit off guard.
Yeah, we knew we were going to make mistakes going into because we're basically pioneering the black white draft because I haven't
Mhm.
really seen much of it before. So we know we're going to make mistakes, and we'll hopefully have this as like a guinea pig season and learn what's good. I'm really excited to see because you guys have probably the two team styles that I thought would be the best, like a sand stall and a drag. So excited to see how that works out.
I'm excited too. I mean, for most of the tiering mistakes, I don't really think any were too egregious. And some of the stuff that I thought was great value, like a 7-point Mandibuzz, ended up going undrafted. So,
Mm,
if people are excited with their teams, I'm not exactly familiar with how mids is going to work this season, if we're allowed to make changes or not. But so far off the board, most of these black white teams looks pretty good.
Yeah. The real egregious tiering mistake in black white that I can't believe we didn't fix was a like 16.9 tails and chlorophyll's banned. So I think in future seasons, I mean either nine trails drop significantly or chlorophyll legal, which I think we should do. But that's a different thing for a different video. Moving on to your Sun Moon draft, and then we'll hear your thoughts about some other teams on the best and worst. So
think I
liquidation makes
spoke
sense.
a little bit earlier about how we noticed in earlier in Little Cup that some of the teams tended to be hesitant to double down, and so we had high hopes that Lando would fall based on the board. And when it fell all the way to 6, I was ecstatic. I think after Coco, Lando is probably the strongest mon in Sun Moon, and so haven't had a chance to use the Z Lando in a while. Definitely excited to see how we're able to flesh out the rest of the season.
Yeah. Well,
And I definitely noticed a lot of copy your homework with some of these Sun Moon drafts. Sun
big
Moon is
time.
such a tried and true meta. It's where a lot of people got their start in draft. And with the smaller pools, allowing people to get really powerful teams and common cores, just seeing a lot of stuff that I've seen before. So should make it interesting to see how people adapt when you can anticipate the sets a little bit more. So I think that's where the real fun with the Sun Moon teams are going to be. Is
Yeah.
I've seen that Garchomp Zapdos Grencore in every season of DPL, and so to see how they are able to flesh that out and surprise people, because you're going to see the Z Dig, you're going to see the Z Blizzard and Z Double Edge Zera. How are teams gonna predict that and play around it is what I'm excited for.
Yeah, there was big time copy homework going on
Hmm.
in the Sun Moon draft. It's really funny. Like honestly, just looking at your team one versus the Lavender Town team two right next to each other. It's like both got the Zera Scarm Hydreigon core.
Yep.
Uh, it's just funny to see it going on. Uh, okay, final two questions. What do you think
Yep.
is the overall best drafted team on the entire board across all teams? Probably not yours, but if you think yours is really the best, tell it to me.
Look, I mean, let's be real. Ours slap, so it's kind of unfair to compare them to the rest of the competition. So I kind of focus elsewhere. I think I said before, I really love Team Two on regional for Outlaws. The fact that they supported back so well, it's got removal, so it doesn't have to be boots every week. Nape in modern gens does tend to struggle, but getting knockoff was definitely a huge plus to it to provide a little bit more utility. I think on the Uber's teams, loved that Chien Pao Metagross team. I looks a little goofy. The fact that you can play at HO, you can play bulk. It's got pivoting. Both of the Terra caps for Pony Island Pelipers were snipes. Those were our original targets, and they went undrafted in the other drafts, which was something that we thought was interesting. That they got prioritized so high, round 4 in both, only to go undrafted in the other.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Okay, so Chicago Outlaws regional decks, and then
Yep.
Pony Island Pelipers Ubers.
Yep, Pony Island Pelipers team 1. I think Grookey with Glide, there was a Glide nerf, but I still am definitely shocked that that was allowed. That's something that I've seen limited a lot, and I think the fact that it fell so far in both drafts, or sorry, in draft 1, allowed them to build a really strong team. So I
Hmm.
really love that Pony Island Pelipers, Grookey Staryu, Growlithe team. I mean, the fact that you can support Growlithe with an extra, it's not going to live any powerful, earthquakes from a Mudbray, but just random coverage moves to allow it to Rockhead,
Yep.
abuse, and then just break and then have Grookey clean, I think is really strong. I think Scraggy's another mon that's really going to excel in this format. That Lavender Town Team 1 is one that I'm excited for. I think Scraggy Elekid maybe was priced a little higher than I would have liked to see, but when you can flesh the draft out around it, despite the price, it doesn't matter.
That's funny. I thought some of the picks on that LTG team one were a little bit
Hmm.
dubious. So I love the Scraggy like kid coughing Drillbur. The other four I
Hmm.
thought were a bit dubious personally.
Jupiter's one that you can't sleep on. The power is still
Mm,
real, and then webs is not something that a lot of
true.
teams are prepared for looking at it. I don't
True.
see really any defog options other than far-fetched. You not gonna set it against the Poniard, but again, some of these teams' removal is not as strong as I feel like you want it to be.
Mm, mm, great.
But then
Okay.
again, that's Scarlet and Violet in a nutshell, right? Just slap boots on everything.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Uh, and final question: what do you think is the worst drafted team on here?
Oh, you really did want some spice, huh?
I'm looking for fighting words. I want to start a freaking riot in general after this is posted.
Sure. When power creep is so strong in regional decks, I think prioritizing cores that were strong in previous gens are going to fall off a little bit. So, Gren Zap is really strong in Sun Moon. I don't think that draft is going to do nearly as well. Just Gren can't break without Z moves. Yes, you got Battle Bond, but I don't know that teams are going to let you get that +1 all that often. Which really is a shame, to see a Bax without a chilly reception into it.
Mm.
So I definitely was disappointed with the way that one got fleshed out, because when you looked at the Zapdos Iron Moth, I'm like, okay, we got something, and then yeah, just fell off on the bottom half.
Mm.
Um, was not super excited with whenever I saw the Poniard Marini on their team too as well. Mudbray's one that I love, Poniard's one that I love, but when you're gonna do a anti-defog team with Poniard Snivy, you want to pair it with really strong hazard setters to try and incentivize team to try and defog. And Abra's going to be forcing a ton of switches,
Mm.
and you
Mm.
don't really have the strongest knockoff switch-ins or moves to hit Abra other than Poniard, and that's not something you really want tanking a bunch of hits. So I was kind of confused with the way that they fleshed that out a little bit. And not to just pick on Ego the whole time, because like we said before, that their black white teams are some of the stronger ones.
Yeah, I was gonna say actually, Emo was one of my picks for top drafts overall, like across
Mhm.
all tiers. Funny enough, uh, them
That's what I'm
and
saying.
you.
They've got some strong sun moon and some strong black white. Just every once you can't hit every time.
You're just trying to start a fight, and I love it. Do you have any fighting
100%.
words to end this video?
I do. Cam, pull up in sun moon.
You heard it here, folks. Cam, you better watch out because Daddy's coming to get your number, baby. Thanks for watching. We will catch you all next week with the recap.